things
Where's
together.
the tea
And I think
bag,
what
Len?
I came through was fun. I have had a really fun life with you, with the ups, the downs, the moves, the good times, the bad times. By and large, it's been fun. And that's really, really so important to me. We shared so much, we enjoyed so many things together. We've had a very full life. We really have real partners. We've been working together on everything through the years. We're still working now and enjoy every minute of it. So I wanted to thank you for being wonderful. And let's see what else I have to say. He's agreeable. I have a whole list of stuff. So agreeable, flexible, encouraging, and helpful. And he helped me through many years of going back to school a number of times. And it's been really appreciated. And that's it. I want to thank you for all your support through the years. And
now it's my turn.
Time limit. Hey.
It's the same thing, just switch with me. Thank you.
It's my turn.
Coffee, sir? You didn't put sweet and low in
I haven't had
there.
a captive audience in probably 20
Maybe I
years.
did. Yes, I did. All right,
I've
another
got to
one.
make this humorous for you. Well, first of all, there are a number of older friends I have. I did not invite them. They're not in good health. They're all over the place in Vermont and whatever. But one interesting character is right here in Hollywood, Florida. And you might say, why would you invite Artie Perlmutter? He introduced
I remember that name.
He took us to a party when I was 19, and he said, Richard, we have 2 girls there, and one of which happened to be Ruth, and one he went out with. But Artie would always get, because I had a car, and so he'd say anything to get me to her out the party. Anyway, that's when I met Ruth. I could be. Now, why would I not invite him? Artie Perlmutter would not stop smoking. He's still alive. We went to visit him about 5 years ago, and he would stop smoking. If you ever had a recollection of it, so we went to visit him. If you've ever had a conversation with somebody who's had their larynx removed, you would know why I didn't invite him. So it's one of those things. Anyway, so that's what we have a pleasant time. So let me just tell you about one interesting thing nobody would know about. My first 6 years of life, I was born in a hospital in Manhattan. My parents were classical music. They had concerts in the 1920s in Carl Fisher Hall, and my mother was my father's star pupil. It was singing, and then my older sister with the violin and the piano and the singing. The house was full of music. Now, we lived in a house in Elm Place in the street of all private homes. And it was wonderful for my parents, and my father had a big music room with a grand piano, and he had the music stands. The big thing he did, he was educated in Europe. He coached opera singers. So they would come to the house, and they would learn how to pronounce, when they had a duet, they would learn how to pronounce, the arias and whatever it was. Let me tell you, I couldn't take it. As a kid, I'd go in for lunch, and he'd be in there with the man and wife practicing a duet. My sister would be in there with the violin. My mother would be practicing her vocalizes, if you don't know what that is. If you think about Barbara Streisand, why is her voice so beautiful? It's because the number of hours they spend every day practicing as any musical instrument. So life was wonderful. And then I started kindergarten at about 6 years old. The school was right near.
How long is this going to take?
It was perfectly safe. All the houses were together. And let me tell you, what happened as far as services went, you didn't practice outside, you went in the backyard. The backyards were all connected. And the windows from all the kitchens looked out. It was perfectly safe. No stranger could get in there, but you didn't go in the front. Now, out in the front, cobblestones, the deliveries were made with horses and carts.
Oh, I don't remember.
So early in the morning, you hear the knippity
not. Thank God.
Elm Place. It was down around Fordham Road and Webster
down
Avenue.
towards
Oh, that
Webster.
little street.
That
Yeah, the
little
little
street.
street.
I love the shops.
It was all private, they were all private wooden homes, nothing special. And they were all in there. So you'd hear the Iceman come through, and he'd take the ice. And every home had a little hole in it called an ice box.
Uh-huh.
The 19th. Wait, are you sure you're
36.
telling us?
Yes.
That goes much older than you say.
The ice box. And the guy would put the ice in the box on the outside of the house, and you were on the inside, so you put your
During
eggs
the
and
war.
you put your eggs and milk in there. So the next person that would come by would be probably the milk and cheese. no juice in those days. And then during the day,
No juice either.
You made your own juice in those days by hand. But then the next groups that came through would be people selling things, and the streets, they're dangerous to walk on. There were cobblestones, they weren't paved. So here's the story. I'd come in for lunch, I'd eat very quickly because all the music was killing me. I couldn't wait to get outside and get away from it all. It was too much. And my sister was in high school of music and art, and she was back and forth, and then she went to the organ and the piano and the violin and the singing. My mother with the piano and the singing, and my father with the voice and the coaches.
You would have liked it, Marty.
Yeah.
You should have been in that house.
Like that. It was non-stop. Anyway,
Should have switched
the one
places.
thing I have to tell you about this, one day I'm in the house eating, and my mother, who was always very pleasant, Ruth will tell you, all of a sudden she stiffened up. And I said, what was wrong? She grabbed a broom and ran out of the house. I gotta tell you, I was so afraid. I couldn't imagine what would happen to my mother to make her run out the front door with a broom. And I went over, you weren't allowed to go out the front, so we had a bay window. I looked out there, and out in the street, all these German and Irish women from the different houses all ran out there with their brooms, and they were blocking a guy who was coming through with his horse and his cart.
Horse and
And
cart? What
why
year is he
was that?
talking about?
What happened was his horse had gone to the bathroom,
Oh.
and he was trying to get through the street without cleaning up after him. I didn't know what was going on there. They forced this guy to go back and take care of matters.
I don't remember anything he was talking
It's the
about.
funniest thing I ever saw. So going forward, I have a wonderful life. It's very sheltered, and we go down to these
I don't remember much of my life. You remember more than I
concerts,
do.
and I'm up there singing a little bit. At one point, my father puts me in front of an audience, you know, Carl Fisher Hall, Crossing Carnegie Hall, long before we could set up. And then all of a sudden, I start school. I'm about the second week of kindergarten, which is about a week before. I come home, my mother and father are at the kitchen table, looking so grim, and they say, Richard, we have to move. And I said, I'm so pretty stupid. I said, oh, that sounds like fun. We'll move, because everything was fun. So they were not, they looked at me like, anyway, what happened is, they wouldn't tell you why we had to move. Make a long story short, this was all untold to me and my sister, and we had to move to a location. There was a bad housing shortage, and this was 1942. The war was not going well, Second World War, so we found a small place to live. And the reason is my father had to get to a train to take him some unknown destination. Couldn't talk about what it was. We didn't know what it was. He couldn't talk to us about it. All I know, it didn't matter because all the men went to work in the morning, so he went to work. What had happened was, at age 50, my father was drafted.
Oh,
He wasn't
my
drafted
God.
to fight in the war, but because his knowledge of languages, from the music and what he had to go to this place which is called the War Department. It's the lowest part of Manhattan now, in Battery Park. It's now the Historical Museum of the American Indians. That's that building now.
okay.
And you have to go down there, and he'd have to read people's mail. It was spying on people. And they would open the mail, and you would look to see if there were codes in there, written in languages. And he did that for a few years. So we didn't really know. They couldn't say anything about it. But at the very end of the war, after about 3 years, then they opened this all up, and they took us all down there. They showed us how you open the mail of other people, and then you resealed it afterwards. So our life had really changed by that point. That's how we wound up on Morris Avenue. But couldn't say a word about it. We didn't know what was going on there. And whether it did any good or not, we don't know. It was the War Department, and who knows. Then the war turned very quickly when we got our act together there. So anyway, I thought you'd be interested. That's how things came back to normal, and I wound up on Morris Avenue, parties, or whatever it was. But those 6 years, I have to say, were very unusual. We lived on a little private street, and you were mentioned, you knew that street, Elm Place. It's unbelievable. It was something like out of a movie or upstate New York, with all those little private homes, with the German and Irish housewomen, all tough. They maintained their, the whole household there.
Jewish women lived in apartment buildings.
Anyway, that's the story, folks.
Jews lived in apartments.
I remember.